Welcome to Just One Thing for Parents. Today we're talking about artificial intelligence. AI seems to have taken over the world, doesn't it? And there's this lively debate about its future and its profound implications on society, potentially. This conversation seems especially critical for parents and educators as we seek to understand how AI is shaping the educational landscape and influencing our children's lives. So, to help us with this, I was joined by Daniel Emmerson. He's the Academic Affairs Lead at GoodNotes and the Executive Director of Good Future Foundation. And he's been leading this initiative at GoodNotes, looking at AI's effect on educational practices. As Daniel points out, AI tools are not just a fleeting trend, they're here to stay. And he talks about how parents can support kids thinking about dilemmas, homework, about how to prepare them for the future, because we live in an AI integrated world now. Educators are trying to get their head around it, but parents need to get their head around it too, and potentially learn alongside their young people about how AI can enhance learning and how we can protect kids from the potential downside of these technologies. So listen here for my conversation with Daniel Emmerson. Okay, so welcome, Daniel, to the podcast. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you for the invitation, Bettina. It's great to be here.
Okay, so the question for you is, what is just one thing parents can do to support their kids to use AI in their learning?
I think for the majority of parents, artificial intelligence is such a big subject that we often approach it in the same way we might if something feels dangerous or if something feels threatening, and that's to try and restrict access to it and to stop children from using it. I think because of the way that artificial intelligence is already impacting so much of our day-to-day lives. I mean, AI isn't necessarily a new thing. It's been around for many, many years in various different guises. It's a part of the social media that we use every day. It's part of music streaming. It's part of the TV streaming apps that you might use as well. It's integrated into so much technology already. The key with artificial intelligence and parenting, I think, is to learn about it with your children. And I'm saying this as a dad. I have a 10-year-old daughter. And at the moment, we spend 1 hour every Sunday afternoon going through some of the content on Common Sense Media, which is a free resource to use for navigating the internet quite generally, and also things like social media use, and other forms of technology. It's really quite fun to do that with my daughter, but I feel like I'm going through a learning process with her. And then if we do talk about things like artificial intelligence, which she knows a little bit about because I talk about it from my work and from my field, then I'm approaching it as a learner alongside her. So we're focusing on what are the benefits of using this technology, what might be some of the negative implications. Let's make a list of these things. How do we maximize the positive things it might be able to do versus the negative things it might be able to do? And then how do we relate that to some of the things we've been learning about on Common Sense Media? So as a process, I would say the number one thing to do as a parent is to explore some of this technology with your children, if you can. I appreciate that involves quite a bit of effort, but there are resources out there online that you can find that will help guide you through which AI tools might be worth exploring, which AI tools are definitely not worth exploring, and what the implications of using some of this technology might be when it comes to things like data protection and privacy, personal information. And again, going through Common Sense Media and having conversations with my daughter about what private information is, what personal information is, and what we might input into a website or an app and what the implications of that are. I would say the same thing is true for a lot of the artificial intelligence tools that people are using.
Wow. So just like we need to really kind of run at it with kids and have a really good conversation about the internet and about sharing data and what that means and about, approaching other people and all the protective factors. You're saying do the same thing with AI. Really embrace it, really run towards it, and almost allocate time in your week to sit down with your child and think about what is this thing and how can it help you and how can it protect you?
I think it's impactful enough that that is worth the investment of time.
Yeah.
And because it's new, it's quite fun to do that as well.
Because most
Um,
parents don't know, let's face it.
for
We're
sure,
all learning, like with them,
for
aren't we?
sure.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, there's something quite fun about that. But in order to do it, you need to overcome this fear of, artificial intelligence. If you're not familiar with what it is or what it does, that it's something that you can't interact with or you can't engage with. Um, and GoodNotes conducted this piece of research last year on generative AI in schools, for example, and we worked with lots of different schools around the world to find out how they were using generative AI. And my favorite and probably most cited example, certainly one of them from that research, is from a prep school where a teacher was using an image generating artificial intelligence tool to explore haikus with the class. So the teacher was the one that was
Haikus.
engaging with the technology. Yeah.
Is that what the technology is called? Sorry.
Oh, so
Sorry.
the technology, this was mid-journey. So the teacher was looking at, what is a haiku? How do you write a haiku?
Right.
Um, what are the implications of seasonal vocabulary in a haiku? And the young learners would first try their hand at writing their own poem,
Mm.
and the teacher would use an AI tool that generated imagery from text to
Mm.
create images that represented what the AI understood those haikus to represent.
Hmm.
And then the teacher would ask the learners to just alter one or two words within their haiku and
Mm.
see what difference it would make to the output of the AI tool
Right.
when it was generating an image. So it was a really like playful and interactive way of using an AI tool, but it got young learners thinking about language and the importance of the vocabulary that they were using and the implications of this on an output from an AI.
Mm.
Midjourney has free models to use. It's really, really simple. You input a text prompt and it gives you 4 images back. You can then
Okay.
either select one of those images if you're happy with it and perhaps manipulate it in some way, or you can download it. Um, and yeah, that's great for presentations and graphics and things that you
Mm.
might want to build. But it's also a really engaging way to have these kinds of conversations with
Mm.
children.
Because I think one of the fears that parents have is that students are there's this idea of cheating, isn't it? I think a lot of parents will say, well, if my kids use AI to do their homework, is that cheating? What would you say to that?
My response to this, I would again directly quote a student that we worked with on this piece of research, who said that if I can use an artificial intelligence tool to complete my homework task, then the homework you've set me is not fit for purpose.
Wow.
But which obviously isn't going to get you very far in the majority of school context. But the point there is a really valid one in that the technology has changed so much that homework, if the purpose of homework is to complete a task and to tick a box,
Hmm.
then we need to really think about the value of that task and whether or not a child should be spending time at home doing something of that nature. I
Mm.
completely and wholeheartedly appreciate that in so many cases, the majority of cases, they don't have a choice and children need to complete the homework tasks that they're set, my daughter included.
Mm.
So yes, AI tools certainly can complete tasks that are set when it comes to generating text. Going back to your initial question, Bettina,
Mm.
on how parents might or actions that parents can take when it comes to AI, is thinking about appropriate use at home.
Yeah.
And again, I encourage this with social media. I didn't invent this. This is borrowed from a very close collaborator and friend, but putting together a list collaboratively with your family about appropriate technology use in the home. Things like whether or not you use a mobile phone at the dinner table, how much time you might spend on a device or an app in any given day, and thinking about artificial intelligence tools in the same way. So,
Mm.
as a starting point, if you're not able to implement structural change when it comes to what a homework task might look like in your child's school, having a conversation with them about the importance of the knowledge that their teacher is hoping that they might acquire through this activity and not using an AI tool to complete it is going to be helpful,
Yeah.
I would hope. But again,
Yeah.
I appreciate that every circumstance is unique.
Yeah. I was working with a university student actually who was feeling very stuck on a task that she had to do. And I said to her, have you thought about seeing how AI can help you? And we thought, and she kind of said, oh, I don't really know. I haven't really used any AI. I don't really know what it is. And we explored it together. And actually, what it did, we were able to put in a prompt that gave an overview of something that I felt just helped her to take that step forward in order to work out how to approach this essay she was a bit stuck on. So I thought, well, it's not cheating, actually. She still has to write it herself, but it's helping. Other things like that that parents could do, if they see their child is stuck or in some way it could really help the child to overcome a difficulty.
Absolutely, yes. So for blank page syndrome and not knowing
Yeah.
how to begin a task or a subject, um, AI can be incredibly helpful in that regard. But in order for it to be helpful, I think you need some scaffolding around that. So you need to know what sort of prompts you're asking the AI tool so that it's not completing the task for you. So instead of asking the AI tool to do the task, asking it to um, give you prompts that you might then use as a starting point for a specific task might
Mm.
be a really, really good and helpful way to do that. Um, or if the student has a view on a subject that they're writing about, to ask the AI for a contradictory perspective or
Mm.
a different understanding of the subject, and then using that as a platform to either argue against or to leverage in some way so that they're not just looking at a blank page and not knowing what to write. It
Mm.
can give them a springboard for thoughts and ideas and reflections.
That sounds so good. Any fears that you have about the potential negative side or negative impact on kids in relation to education?
Yes, I do. And this was mostly brought to my attention. We have an incredible intern with us at Good Notes at the moment, Yo-Yo, and she's the president of the AR and VR Society at Cambridge University. She's in her third year studying education, and she works a lot on AI. Um, and she was talking about teachers using artificial intelligence to create content and for the teachers to disseminate that content, and then for the students to complete those tasks and activities using AI.
Mm.
So there's no real human input in the cycle at all. So the
Right.
biggest the biggest fear is that all levels of interaction are reduced to basic prompt engineering. And I
Wow.
think that's a pretty terrifying prospect because it's also quite a real one. That's something I can see happening, and I hear happening in schools already, where teachers might have free reign to use, for example, ChatGPT to create content for their lessons, and then students use ChatGPT to complete the AI tasks that they've been given by their teachers. And I think that's pretty terrifying. That completely reduces the level of interaction between student teacher and also the subject that they're learning about to nothing. And yeah, that's terrifying.
So there's a big responsibility for teachers suddenly, isn't there, to think about how can I use this and make sure I use this and students use this responsibly.
I think for schools generally, it's so important to have a take on this because of what the technology can do. So I'm working on another piece of research at the moment, and we're looking at how different schools are taking different approaches to the use of artificial intelligence tools. And there are those schools that are embracing it. There are schools that are banning it, and then there are schools that are neutral. The schools that are neutral are probably the biggest risk category because they haven't thought about the implications of artificial intelligence use across the board for homework, coursework, and assessment. Schools that are banning it, that I would argue that isn't a productive approach at all.
A lot
And
of
that's
battles on your hand, really, haven't you?
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. But at least they've recognized that it's has the potential to change teaching and learning practices. And then schools that are embracing it, hopefully those schools are putting in the right infrastructure when it comes to being able to support the students and support teachers in a way that's beneficial. But for any of those schools in any of those categories, having a set of guidelines around what teachers can do, what they should be doing, and how they should be speaking with students about use of AI, I think is absolutely imperative. And that needs to be a discussion at senior leadership level in the school. And I don't think the burden should be put on the teachers. I think they should have a framework to work towards.
Yeah. And for any teachers listening, I believe you published a paper thinking about that, didn't you? They could look up.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, I'll put that in the notes.
That's the Good Notes research on generative AI in schools. It's almost a year old. So we'll be revisiting that, but it's still, yeah, very much focused on the importance of those guidelines, and then on things like professional development and collaboration across the sector as well.
Maybe we could just finish by just saying a little about what you think this technology offers in terms of potential for improving education and learning in the future.
Well, that's quite a big question, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about how to best answer that. I mean, AI tools are already being used in the workplace, I would have thought, any sector that you might care to name. So encouraging use and adoption of how to get the most from AI tools, standard digital citizenship best practice. What does it look like to be a good digital citizen in the world of artificial intelligence? Those are things that I think are critical to any benefits that AI might bring. But there are so many when you look at the different types of tool that are out there. As someone
I wonder, maybe that was a bad question, Daniel. Maybe
no,
we
not
should
at all,
just.
not at all.
It wasn't a bad question. Oh, okay.
No, I think it's a great question because it's one that
I wanted to finish on something positive.
No, and I'll get there for sure because there are so many cool tools out there that teachers and students can be working with and using. So a great example, something I've been playing with quite a bit at the moment, is Aqua Voice, which is a voice to text AI tool. It's in very early stages, so it's a little glitchy and a little slow, but it ultimately allows you to use your voice without having to type anything, and you can create any document or any written piece of work just through using voice command, which, again, as someone with dyslexia, I find it absolutely fascinating, and I think could bring yeah, an entirely new world of learning possibility to students who struggle with writing and typing,
Oh,
written
amazing.
word.
Yeah.
And that's one example, but there are so many. The example
Mm.
of image generating, so using that as a way to really grip students' attention when it
Mm.
comes to specific subjects, I think yeah, is a brilliant thing to be able to do. Personalization,
I love
bulk
that. I love
grading,
that idea of
saving
like,
teacher time.
yeah, like a tutor
Mm,
that working as a tutor in a really positive way, asking questions and being able to point out where there's imperfections and almost like becoming one to one. You know, because at the moment, group learning obviously is imperfect, and one-to-one tutoring can really help identify those things. But isn't there an idea that AI may be used in order to offer that personalized learning to kids in time?
absolutely, yes. And I think with the right guardrails in place, then that is a real possibility.
Mm,
And yeah, definitely a benefit that we could see from AI tools moving
mm,
forward.
yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Daniel, for coming on today. Your wisdom and advice and knowledge is going to be so helpful, I think, to everybody out there.
I should have said at the beginning, Bettina, I'm a complete rookie and novice in this space. I'm learning as I go. Um,
Right.
I I encourage folks to experiment with this where they can,
Mm,
to not feel like it's a subject area or a form of technology that they can't approach because
mm.
yeah, you can. Uh,
Yeah, I just
I
love the
encourage you to do
idea
it.
of you and your daughter sitting down together and learning about it together. I think that's such a lovely model for going forward. Oh, thanks so much for coming on today.
A pleasure, Bettina. Thanks so much for having me.